Welcome to today's webinar on immigration to Canada, featuring Attorney Joseph Rebibo. Whether you're considering making Canada your new home or simply curious about the immigration process, you're in the right place. This session will cover everything you need to know about immigration to Canada, from the basics to the more complex questions. Plus, we'll have a Q&A segment where you can get personalized answers directly from an expert. Thank you for joining us, and let's dive into the opportunities that await you in Canada.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us on our webinar, Rebibo Legal Webinar. We try to make webinars as often as possible. We're trying to talk about different talking points every time we do a webinar. And we appreciate, of course, if you have any questions, any things that you would like us to discuss regarding immigration to Canada from any part of the world, of course, please say so, and it will be my pleasure to discuss these things with you, explain them more in detail for the future webinars, for this webinar, moving forward as well. We do these webinars specifically in order to give a little bit of an overview of what we do as a law firm, how we can help you out, how our services are tailor-made for people like you, people that are outside of Canada that don't necessarily have either a visa to Canada, experience, either working, studying in Canada, anything at all. So the point of this webinar is to give you a little bit of an overview, to give you a little extra information on how we can help you, why to choose us, why to use our services in order to help you immigrate to Canada. And I hope that this webinar is going to give a little bit of a boost of confidence, of information in order for you to begin your process. And of course, visit us and see us as soon as possible in Canada. So I just wanted to introduce myself a little bit, explain to you also what we do as a law firm, how we can help you, what we do step by step on how you're going to start your immigration process and continue it and eventually come to Canada. And then I'm going to leave a little bit of time for a question period for you to present maybe your personal situations, specific questions about how you want to come to Canada, how it works in general in terms of programs, immigration pathways into Canada, and we'll be able to answer all those questions. I believe that usually I can go into more detail when you give me your specific situations or ask questions, and that will give a little bit more content for the webinar and for your information as well. Please, you can start even now to write questions in the chat. At the end, when I finish explaining a little bit of what we do, a little bit of myself and everything, I will go through all the questions. You can start sending the questions even now. There's not a problem. I will go through all the questions and answer all the questions to the best of my ability. So as you all know, my name is Joseph Rebibo. I'm a lawyer in Montreal in Canada. We're in Montreal in the province of Quebec. Our city is a bilingual city, both French and English. I speak both French and English. Usually in Canada in general, in terms of immigration, you can either speak French or English, come to Canada to either learn one of the languages, but these are the two main languages in Canada, the two official languages in Canada, and we are in a province that speaks both languages. The other provinces in Canada are usually mainly Anglophone. So in general, in terms of the amount of people that come into Canada, the majority of the people are Anglophone speaking. People that speak English, that want to learn English, that want to stay in Canada and improve their English, or come to Canada and live in an area that is mainly English speaking. So this webinar we just completed a webinar in French, actually, for French participants, French people that speak French that want to come to Canada. It's important that you know that your advantage here is that the majority of the people that come to Canada are mainly Anglophone speaking immigrants. Therefore, you are part of a broader amount of people that have opportunities to come to Canada. It doesn't mean that if you speak French, you don't have opportunities to come to Canada, but you're definitely in a situation where there's a lot more opportunities, programs, space in Canada, provinces, cities, in order for you to hop on an immigration pathway or an immigration plan to start your process. Now, as I said, my name is Joseph Rebibo. It's been a few years now that I specialize in immigration law. And it's been several years now that the majority of our clients are internationals like you, people that want to come to Canada to either study, work, or gain permanent residency in Canada. Now, our immigration process starts really on a two-phase plan. What's extremely important for you to understand is that our goal at the end of the day is for, if you will start your process to come to Canada and you will eventually come to Canada, that there will be a plan for you to eventually gain permanent residency in Canada. There are two main ways of how you can immigrate to Canada. You can come to Canada either temporarily, or you can come to Canada on a permanent residency program. It's important to understand that the majority of people, and it's completely normal, are not eligible for permanent residency right off at the get-go. That's important to understand because you have to have very specific qualifications, very specific experiences to have the opportunity to apply for permanent residency directly when you start your process. Usually, if you don't have any experience, either studies, work, or anything in Canada, it would be very difficult for you to be eligible for permanent residency directly. Therefore, a lot of our clients are eligible for temporary residency programs, which means you're going to come to Canada and you will have on your visa an expiration date. Our goal as a law firm, and you will get this plan step by step when you start a process with us, is that you will know exactly how you will come to Canada and how eventually you will be eligible and you will get permanent residency in Canada. That is the most important. Even if you are coming to Canada temporarily, it does not mean that you have to return back to your country even if you have an expiration date, but you need a plan on how you're going to come to Canada temporarily and you're going to have enough experience in Canada to eventually apply for permanent residency. That is the most important thing. We work on a two-step process. The first step is specifically knowing your eligibility to come to Canada. We do not want to begin a process with you, take on a client that is not able to come to Canada at the end. Therefore, when you start your process and you begin, if you are not eligible for anything, in Canada, you will get reimbursed. That means we will reimburse you whatever you have paid because we cannot help you. Now, if you are eligible for something, that is the first step of the process, you will get an eligibility report that will detail and outline all the different types of options that you can undertake in order to immigrate to Canada. Together, we will go on another phone call. We have another phone call where I'll be able to explain to you the advantages, disadvantages, the cost, the delays, the chance of success, everything you need to know in order for us to begin the process and choose the best option available for you so that we can begin as soon as possible. Therefore, why we do this is because you might get a lot of phone calls and emails from other agencies or companies that will tell you, okay, pay whatever amount of money and you will apply for permanent residency, you will apply for work permit. 95% of the time, if you get contacted online, it will be a scam. And that is why we're doing these webinars. That is why if you go on our website, you'll find testimonials, you'll find reviews from clients. We are open about everything. You're able to see us on our YouTube channel, on our TikTok channel, on Instagram. Everything is open. We are registered under the Quebec Business Registrar. We're registered under the Canadian Federal Business Registrar. You can find me as a lawyer registered on the Bar Association of Canada. Usually in the other webinars, I have showed you directly on the webinar how to find me as a legitimate lawyer, licensed lawyer on the Bar Association's website. I won't do it this time. If you're not sure how or you want to know how, you have a few options. First of all, I will leave my email in the chat for you to send me any questions you have. If you want to confirm the agent that you are speaking to, that they work well with us and everything, there's not an issue. I will give you all that information. You can email me, send me a WhatsApp at any time if you have any questions and anything at all. Or please speak to the agent you were speaking to before getting onto this webinar. Ask them how can you prove to me that Joseph Rebibo is a legitimate lawyer in Quebec, is a legitimate lawyer in Canada. We will give you all that information. There is not one question that we are not able to answer for you. If you speak to an agency or a company and they're not able to answer some of the basic questions you have about your immigration process, it is probably a scam. Please be aware because the majority of the companies online are scams, and it's important to make sure that you're dealing with a legitimate company. You are dealing with a licensed, legitimate lawyer. That is the most important thing. And we are here to help you with all that. If you don't want to use our services and you are speaking with an agency or company, send me a message, ask me, is this legitimate? Should I use them? I will tell you, use us or anything. I have no issue with that. I will give you that information because it is a shame. Of course, we have a lot of clients that end up getting scammed out of their hard-earned money, a lot of money from companies that are taking their money and not doing anything at all. So that is, of course, very, very important. I wanted to, before we get into question period and going into your specific situations and hopefully go into more into detail on how we can move forward on your process, I wanted to give a little bit of a example of a client I had that was outside of Canada that I brought to Canada. It was a very specific situation and it's important to explain how every single client that wants to come, every single person that wants to immigrate to Canada has a different situation, has a different plan. That is why if you're going to write in the chat right now, for example, I am a truck driver, how do I come to Canada? I will not be able to answer that for you. The reason is because everyone is a different situation. Everybody has different qualifications. Everyone has different experiences. Everyone has different level of studies. Everyone has a different amount of work experience in a specific domain, in a specific tier of work. Everyone is a different age, so calculating all these different types of qualifications that each person has, everybody will have different options on how they can come to Canada. So that is extremely important. That is why I wanted to explain this story to show you how for a specific case, it was tailor-made for this client to be able to come to Canada and eventually gain permanent residency in Canada. After I explain this story, I will start with the questions, so you can continue asking questions in the chat, and I promise you I will answer all those questions as well. So I had a client that came from a country, one of an African countries, and he wanted to come to Canada, and he was actually a refugee. He was a refugee in one of those countries, and he was obviously in a situation where he didn't really have any status in the country that he was in. The problem with not having any status is that there was no really future for him in terms of work, in terms of his family, all of his family, because he was a refugee. His wife, his children, they were all refugees as well. So there was no really future for him, and because they had a refugee status, they didn't really have the opportunity, the option to travel to other countries as well. So he asked me, what can I do? I really want to come to Canada. How can I make it happen? How can I come? And I gave him some of the options, and one of the main options that he had, because he was a refugee, was I gave him an option that he was able to come to Canada to study and work at the same time. Now, one of the advantages that he had is that he fell under a program that allowed him to come study without having to pay exorbitant amount of tuition fees, that he was almost paying the same amount of Canadians in order to come study in Canada. It was a specific program. There are many, many different types of programs in Canada that allow specific people to come, have a reduction in fees in terms of studies, and eventually gain permanent residency. Now, the problem with this is that, yes, a lot of people are eligible for student visas. The problem with this was that because he was a refugee, he had a refugee status in the country that he was in, it would have been very difficult for me to apply for a study permit for him to eventually get accepted. The reason is because when you are applying to Canada to get a study permit, you have to prove to the government that after your studies, you will technically leave and go back to your country because you are coming to Canada on a temporary resident permit. Now, of course, our plan, as I said in the beginning, is to give you the option on how you don't have to leave Canada and you can stay eventually to have permanent residency. But that does not mean that when you get your visa, there will still be an expiration date and you still have to prove to the government that you will go back home. How do you prove to the government? You have to prove to them that you have ties back in your country, that you have opportunities to work back in your country, that you have opportunities to live, and a future back at your country. The problem with this client is that he did not, because he was a refugee, he did not have these proofs. He did not have a lot of money. He did not have a lot of ties to the country. He did not have a future because he didn't have a passport from that country. And he had a lot of issues, of course, in proving that he would leave Canada after and go back home. So what I suggested him, which I thought about it, and I came up with an idea because I knew that in Canada, if you are in Canada and you want to change your status in Canada, it is much easier to change your status in Canada rather than applying from abroad and applying directly to a specific status. For example, if you come to Canada as a visitor, okay, and you're in Canada and you want to change your status from a visitor to a student, At that point, when you change your status, it is much faster and much easier to get accepted because a Canadian visa office is assessing your application rather than a visa office abroad who has limits and a certain amount of people that they can accept and has a lot of regulations that they have to follow in order to either accept or refuse someone. Therefore, I thought I'm going to try to bring this person over to Canada as a visitor. He's going to come to Canada as a visitor, and then when he is in Canada, we will get the letter of admission. We will try to change his status as a visitor to a student. The client agreed. They said, okay. Honestly, they put their trust in me. They said, okay, I didn't fully understand, of course, what the implication would be, but I told them this was the best option in order to get accepted, in order to move forward, and eventually, of course, obtain permanent residency and get to the goals that he wanted for him and his family. We decided to do that. We applied for a visit visa. He eventually came to Canada as a visitor and applied directly for a student visa under the program that was allowing him to get a reduction in tuition fees and come to Canada with a work permit to work as well, and his kids were able to study as well. So he came to Canada as a visitor. I applied directly. Within 2 or 3 weeks, we received a response for the study permit, and he had got accepted. He had got his study permit, changed his status from a visitor to a study permit, and he started his studies right away. Once he started his studies, he was able to work on the side. He gained enough points for permanent residency for the Express Entry program, which is the main permanent residency program in Canada. He had enough points for his studies. He had enough points for work experience because he got a postgraduate work permit as well after his studies. And he applied for permanent residency, and he is now awaiting his permanent residency card to, of course, be completely legal in Canada without any restrictions whatsoever. So this is a specific case where we took, as a law firm, we took our knowledge on how we've helped out other clients, where we had clients that were in Canada, and we realized that once they wanted to change their status, it was much quicker and much faster, and we applied it to a specific situation where a client we knew would not get accepted because he didn't have enough proofs to prove that he would be able to return back to his home country, and we knew that applying for a visitor visa was much easier than applying for a study permit from abroad. So we decided to go the easier route, and then to go the easier route within Canada, and it worked out at the end, and fortunately he's very happy, and he is waiting for his permanent residency now. I wanted to explain the story just to explain to you why it's important to use a law firm. A lot of people end up using their own means to apply to come to Canada, and sometimes it doesn't work out. It doesn't mean that you can't do it. Everybody can apply on their own. You're not obligated to use a lawyer, a law firm, a consultant to come to Canada, but it always helps because there are things that I can come up with my experience that you would not know, and that's completely normal because you do not work in this field. I'm going to try to answer the questions now. If you have any questions, please write it in the chat. I will leave my email in the chat as well. If you have any questions for myself, you can always send me an email, and I will be able to answer. I will answer every question, of course. All right, so we will start. How can I get a job as a truck driver in Canada? So as a law firm, we are not a recruitment agency. We're not here to find you a job, but we are here to find you the perfect visa for you to be able to come to Canada, to be allowed and to be legally allowed to work. Once you have a visa to come to Canada that you're allowed to work, at that point, we are able to help you find a job because you have the visa that will allow you to find a job. It's extremely important to understand if somebody calls you, an agency or a company calls you and tells you, pay this amount of money, we have a job for you, it is almost 100% sure a scam. Nobody can give you a job when you have no status in Canada. There are millions of people that want to come to Canada with a job. Nobody can do it. And it creates a whole environment of scammers trying to tell people and convince people with fake offer letters that they have a job to come to Canada, when in reality, that is not the case, and they want to steal your money. Why don't you speak Spanish? I'm born in Canada. I live in Canada. I speak English and French. We do have a Spanish department, though, where we have people that do speak French, that if you want to speak, it's not a problem. You can send me an email. I will forward you to them. They will explain you the process in Spanish. And there are opportunities for people that do speak Spanish in Canada in order to improve either the English or the French, but Spanish is not an official language in Canada. In the United States, for example, in the state of Florida, most people do speak Spanish. So that's a little bit different. But in Canada, it's much less common for people to be speaking Spanish. Temporary visa under which category? As a tourist. So temporary visa, there are 3 different options to come as a temporary resident to Canada. You can come to Canada as a student, as a worker, or as a visitor. So those are 3 different options. Under those 3 different options, you have over 50 different types of programs that allow you to come to Canada under one of those options. With study and visa refusal, it's possible to get a work visa on teaching job. If you have a study and visa refusal, you really need to use the services of a professional, because at this point, once you have two refusals, there needs to, when you reapply again for something, you need to know really how to respond to the refusals, to the points made by the government on why you refuse. You need to respond to all those things, and you need a professional that knows how to respond to a refusal properly, and that is either to use a law firm, an agency, a consultancy, but that is registered and licensed to help you make sure that you're able to check out these things. Hi, do you help with work visa after the temporary visa? Our job, as I said, we work on a 2-step plan. The first step is to find out what you're eligible for. Once we find out what you're eligible for, we are able to tell you how long it will take, the advantages, disadvantages of the different types of visas. And once we're able to get you a visa to be able to come to Canada, at that point, we are able to hopefully find you a job when we know that you are legally able to work in Canada. If you are not legally able to work in Canada, unfortunately, we are not a recruitment agency and nobody can help you find a job when you don't have a working visa in Canada. Is IELTS very compulsory for PR? IELTS is not obligatory at all. IELTS is not obligatory at all. For some situations it is. For PR, usually it is. You will have to have a language test. Either if it's a French or English test, you will have to have a language test. For temporary resident applications, you do not need necessarily an IELTS exam, but in general, having an IELTS exam is only an advantage. I'm so glad you came on Zoom because I've had different discussions with your agent on several occasions, but I was really scared of being scammed. Of course, that is why we're doing these Zooms, these webinars, but it's important to understand that even if you're not attending this webinar, you're not able to see me personally and everything, I'm always available to answer your questions. You can send me an email, a message, anything at all. As I said before, if you're speaking to a company and they're not able to answer your most basic question, it is most probably a scam. Everything is open with us. You're able to find us. The government website, our company is registered, both provincially, federally. You're able to find me as a registered lawyer in Canada as well. All these things are out in the public. Everything is out in the public to show you the law firm is under my name. It's not a different name of a company trying to hide whoever is working behind it. So that is extremely important. And I'm glad that you're with us in the webinar to see this. But important to know that in the future, any questions, we are able to answer everything. You want to speak to me directly, you can always send me an email, send me a message. I will respond to everything. Can you convert visiting visas to work or PR? So a few months ago, about a year or two ago, the government came out with a policy that allowed people to change their status from visitor visa to a work permit. Now it changed and we're no longer able to do that. Now it doesn't mean that you can't come to Canada, find a job and then change your status. It is possible, but when you apply for your work permit, you will just have to leave Canada and wait for the response in order to return. That is the only difference, and eventually it should change back to being able to change your status, but for right now, they changed that you are not able to come to Canada and change your status within Canada. How about someone with a Bachelor of Pharmacy degree from Nigeria without much work experience who currently lives in the UK on a post-study visa, did a Master's of Public Health in the UK, and is yet to get a certificate? In order for us to be able to tell you what we can do for you and how we can help you, the most important thing is to start your process. As I explained, the 2-step process of the first one, finding out what you're eligible for. If you're not eligible for anything, you will get reimbursed. And if you're eligible for something, you will know all the advantages, disadvantages. And the real reason why we do this in 2 steps is because the first step of the process is a very minimal fee, okay, for you to understand what you're eligible for, and you won't be missing out on anything. Even if you start your process on this fee, it is a minimal fee compared to your immigration process that you will not lose out on anything. You will only gain on the knowledge that you'll know what you're able to do in Canada, how long it will take, what you can apply for, and how you can move forward. And if you decide to move forward on the second step and begin your process, that will be your decision. To apply for PR with my family, must I do IELTS? Applying for PR, you'll have to have either IELTS or a French exam. We are able to help you in practicing for the IELTS, practicing for an English exam. That is not a problem. When you start your process, we will tell you what you will need to do to get the minimum score or the score that's needed in order for you to eventually get accepted or get chosen to apply for permanent residency. What are the assurance of getting a job in Canada? We are not a recruitment agency. We do not find jobs for people unless you have a visa to come to Canada. That's why the first step is telling you what type of visa you can get in Canada for us to move forward. What is the financial implication for all this process? The financial implication for all this process depends on what we are applying for. We charge fees based on the work that we are performing for your file. So when you start your process, when you know exactly what you're applying for, you will know a breakdown of the fees on why we're charging this. Are you many people in your family? Do you have children? Do you have a family? It is all based on the amount of work that is needed for your file. Joseph, are you saying someone can change from visitor visa to work or study visa? So, in terms of changing your visa, right now you cannot change from a visiting visa to a work visa, but you can change from a visiting visa to a study visa. That is correct. Are you involved in any U.S. immigration process? I am a Canadian immigration lawyer. I cannot help with U.S. immigration process. So how can you trust our company? We are a law firm. So we are not a company, we are not a business company, we are a law firm that is here to help you navigate the immigration process, and we are a registered law firm. I am a lawyer. You're able to find me on the Bar Association's website. If you want to have the links to find that, please ask your agent. They will send you all these links. If you want me to, please send me a message and I will send it as well. So anybody could potentially apply for PR. It's not really necessarily with your band score. But is it important to see your other point score based on your other qualifications? Sorry, one moment. Sorry about that. I just needed to get some water. Sorry about that. So, can somebody with band score 5.5 in IELTS apply for PR? So, in general, applying for PR, you have to see where you land on the point score. So, you have to see what type of score you need for your IELTS in order to get enough points to apply for permanent residency. Please send if you have any other questions in the chat. If you have any other questions in the chat, please send. I will be right back. Okay, sorry for the wait. Okay, so we will try to do more webinars in the future. If you have any questions, you can always send me an email with your specific questions. I will answer all those emails. If you want to start your process, please contact one of your agents, contact myself, and we'll be able to get started. It's important to start your process as soon as possible in order to know what you are eligible for, what you can apply for, and to move forward as soon as possible so you know what options you have. Even if you're not ready now to start your process, it's important to know now what you are eligible for so you can prepare yourself so you can move forward, either if it's learning improving an English language, improving a French language, improving whatever you need to do in order to be eligible, in order to get either a temporary permit or be eligible for PR. We will try to do webinars every month, if possible, every couple of weeks, if possible as well. If you have any specific questions that you want to learn about during the webinars as well, please send us a message and we will be able to hopefully take care of that. Thank you, everyone. Have a great end of your weekend, and I hope to see you in Canada as soon as possible.